Hi there, and welcome to week 4. And we are getting more heavily into the second essay. You've done a good bit of invention work already. You did your list about things you write, and you wrote a free write on that. And then I had you read the 3 essays, Why I Write. And Eudora Welty's essay title always escapes me, and only one of you used it, and that's okay. But anyway, you read the 3 essays, you chose one to read more closely and annotate, and now you're going to take all of that invention material from the essays, annotations, and your own writing, and come up with an essay of your own focused on this idea. So the second assignment says, one of the keys to being an academic writer is to reader and writers to both discern and make meaning. And so far you've been focusing on the discerning meaning in the text, and you've also been, with the listing and invention, discerning meaning in yourself as a text. You probably don't think of yourself as a text, but most scholars, at least humanities people, often look at people as a text to be read, though I can't read you that well, so don't worry. Anyway, so now that you've done that, the job here is to write a summary of one of those essays, the one you chose to annotate most likely, and then engage in a discussion regarding yourself and in an essay form about the purpose and audience, and how the purpose of that chosen text applies to you, and what makes you and maybe why you see yourself as an appropriate audience for that text, beyond because I told you to read them. We want to get a little bit away from that. So read the assignment 2 overview, and that should get you pointed in the right direction. It tells you that really what we're going to do is look at how does this text speak to you based on its purpose and its audience, which is you in this situation. So read over the assignment 2 overview. I'm having a quick look at it. And so basically it says your purpose there is to demonstrate you can engage in a conversation with a text, a key academic skill, and you can articulate your thoughts on what writing scholars consider the 2 most important aspects of the rhetorical situation: audience and purpose. And I'll keep coming back to this because effective writing, effective communication has a clear purpose, and it has a somewhat clearly defined audience as best you can. The assignment lays out a process, and step 1 is to take your annotations and use that material and draft a summary. Some of you will need to back up a little bit, maybe plug some of the gaps in your annotations to get a more effective summary. You'll just have to see how that goes, and you can get in touch with me. Now, at this point, I think the summary is an important first step, because you just don't really know how you want to respond, how you want to address things, until you've engaged, till you've discerned the meaning in that text as fully as you can. So I think step 1 must be the summarizing. After that, you can write your response, you can write your introduction. In some respects, it might be easier to write about the role of audience and purpose with regard to you in your chosen essay, because once you've done that, then you have something to introduce. But some of you will want to start right off with the introduction, and that's what's going to work for you. So you decide on that. I think you have to have your introduction, your summary, and your response done before you can conclude, because, well, you just need to know what you have to conclude. So it also tells us 1,200 words. Most of you did fine with the essay format. The only consistent error, and it's not a huge one, it's a very minor error, is that the header on the first page goes on the left and not the right, and a few of you put the header on the right. Not a big deal. I didn't even make a note of it in your comments. So that's an overview. If you go, then you will see there's some introduction guidelines. and you'll want to read through those. That talks about the hook, where you want to interest your reader, background and context, where you want to flesh things out so your reader has a sense about why they are reading what they're reading. Some kind of segue or transition to the thesis, otherwise it can be pretty rough. And then a thesis that makes some claim that in this essay you will be developing in the response point. And so for sometimes, and so I have a little sample there. It is not great by any measure because I wrote the introduction without having something to introduce, just based on my understanding of Orwell's essay, having read it many times over many years, and I'm doing it mostly from memory there. So, so look that material over, see what kind of questions you have. Now, I mentioned that the hook and the context can kind of morph into a single chunk of text, I guess. Oftentimes background, is interesting. You can tell a story or something of that sort, of the love you have of writing, the struggles you've had with writing, whatever it might be. And that can be engaging to the reader. So that background context story, what we call an anecdotal introduction, can serve as the hook as well. It doesn't need to be some pithy, quick-witted statement. It doesn't need to some brief sentence like I provided in my example. But it can be kind of anything you want there. So there's some broad, I don't know about broad, but some background information on introductions. With that, there is some guidelines on summary, which essentially calls for you to present the ideas of the original from the original point of view without any interjection of opinion on your part, and you stick to the main ideas. For a summary as brief as we are looking for, I didn't write this down. I think I'll go and edit the summary guidelines. You do not want to have any quotes. I would say you want to use as few of the original words as possible. Obviously, some of them you have to use, but if you just use a single word from the essay in your summarizing, then it doesn't need quotes or anything. If you have 3 or more words in a row and they capture an essential idea, then you probably want to provide a citation. So you also want to be proportional in your treatment as you hit the major details, and you want to include in your summary, 250-word summary. It could be one fairly big paragraph. It could be 2 kind of normal-sized paragraphs. It doesn't really matter, and I'm not going to count the words. I'm just going to make sure you hit the major details. But do open each summary paragraph with something like Welty writes or Didion writes or something of that sort, Orwell writes. You want to use a very neutral verb there. Writes is always the best. You don't want to use claims or argues or suggests or verbs of that sort, because you are engaging in evaluation at that point. And you may well be right, but we want to stick with the objective verb of writes. That is something we can say without a doubt about all 3 writers. They wrote what we see on the page. But anything else is supposition on our part. So look at that and see what you can do, and if need be, I'll provide. I think I have some more information I want to plug in there, and I'll let you know if I do. So those are the summary guidelines. Short and sweet, taking your annotations, taking the idea, boiling the argument and the essay down to its essence. What cannot be omitted without distorting the meaning. And nobody's going to be exactly the same on these, and that's fine. Everybody's going to be a little different, but generally speaking, we want to get the same gist from each of the summaries of the similar essays. So there are some paragraphing guidelines, and these 4 components of a paragraph I consider to be pretty important. I think if you tell, and I take this directly from Aristotle and his rhetoric, you want to tell the reader what it is you're talking about. So what's the point? The importance of the topic, why does it matter? And I've clicked through to the paragraph and response guidelines. You must provide some examples or evidence. Aristotle tells us it's always easier to come up with examples from real life and our experience. And so in this instance, there might be 2 examples in each paragraph, and I'm kind of hoping there are 2 paragraph or examples in each paragraph. Something from the writer that says something, and something from your experience that pairs up with that. Now, most people are pretty good about this. The hard part is the 4th component of the paragraph after the topic statement explaining the topic's importance, providing specific examples and evidence, is some explanation looking back to the thesis statement. In one rhetorical model, this is called the warrant, such as, is something warranted? Did this warrant that kind of thing? It's derived from the kind of notion we know of an arrest warrant that demonstrates the relationship between a criminal and a crime. Well, in this instance, the warrant demonstrates a reasonable relationship between the data, which is the information in the paragraph, and the claim, the thesis statement. So you have to connect that dot for your reader. I'm really big on that, and most academic teachers of writing or people who teach writing for an academic context expect that as well. That's part of the audience expectation for you to connect the dots. As I write in that brief page of information, 2 things will happen if you don't connect the dots for your reader. One, they won't even bother, and then just kind of glaze over to the next point, and maybe something will register. Or if they do try to connect the information, the evidence back to the thesis statement and the claim, they might get it wrong. So you don't want to take that chance. So what you do is you spell it out for the reader. What I wrote in there is that this gives you control over the reader's mind as they read about the connection between the data and the claim. They are then free to reject it. But as far as being persuasive writers, this is one approach to persuading, telling people what things mean. Don't let them come to their own decisions, because they either won't or they'll get it wrong. And then there's a bit of information on conclusions, and I included the final stanza from a poem I like very much, where T.S. Eliot writes, "This is the way the world ends, this is the way the world ends, this is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but a whimper." And this is not, notice that's all caps, how we want an essay to end, with a whimper. We want to go out with as much of a reasonable bang as possible without scaring our reader away or making them think we're crazy or something like that. So this is a place where you get up on your soapbox and you make your final appeal. It's called in rhetoric called a peroration, which I may not pronounce too well, but it's a final heightened appeal, and this is where you do what you can to get readers to come around to your way of seeing things. And so you want to go out with as much of a bang as possible. I mentioned 3 things. Perfectly fine to restate the thesis. You've probably done that in the past, many of you. It's also perfectly appropriate to restate the main points you've hit on in the essay. Perfectly fine as well, but neither of those is enough to go out with a bang. And so what you want to do, and this is going to vary for every one of you and every writing situation, is to plug this into a broader context that has some relationship to your thesis. So that will be different for everybody in this one. It could be the notion that we need, all of us, especially those of us who are working in education, whether getting an education or helping you achieve an education, we have to assume we are all thinkers and writers, and writing is an essential component to the development of our intellect and our ability to see and read the world. And it's a way to order our thoughts. And if we can't order our thoughts, we cannot be effective participants in much of anything, whether it's our chosen profession or as a citizen. And so, thinking is important. It's easy to not think, but we want to think. So these are the kinds of things we can go over in the conclusion. You want to, like I said, go out with a bang, not so much whimper, and do what you can in that regard. So I will stop this here. I'm hoping this doesn't look as gloomy as it might appear to be. I don't have a whole lot of good lighting in my living room. So anyhow, let me know if you have any questions. And one thing I neglected to say, and I shouldn't save this for the end, but here I am. The draft of the essay is due Tuesday. Responses are due by, and that's Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. The responses are due by Thursday at 11:59, and then you'll get the revised essay to me by 11:59 on Saturday. And as you might expect, a couple of minutes either way is not a problem. So if you have any questions, get in touch. Until then, take care and good luck. Bye-bye.